All right, so with this last section, we want to talk about ways that we can respond non-defensively to criticism. Criticism is the hardest to take when it's actually true. So sometimes people, in giving that criticism, they may have something they honestly need to articulate to the other person, but they have a hard time doing it. And so here are some ways to respond to that so that you don't, you kind of minimize your own defensiveness. You can, first of all, ask for specifics. So let's take an example. If someone said to you, "You're lazy," all right, we automatically want to go on the defensive with that. So instead, one of the things we can do is to ask for specifics. Okay, so in what way do you think I'm lazy? How do you see that? Can you give me a specific reason? Anything like that. So in what way? Right? Why do you say that? Okay, so that person's going to be forced into responding in a way that is more specific. Now, none of these are a guarantee, but it's helpful. All right, you can also guess about specifics. So this, again, is going to sound similar to some listening in that we are going to guess what's going on, but we're going to actually add more to that idea. In other words, we're going to add some information. We're going to say, right, are you saying that I'm lazy because I haven't done my chores the past 2 days? Right? So that's, you're guessing about a specific. And they're either going to say, yes, it's that, or no, that's not what I mean. I understand you've been busy, right? So, but it's going to garner a more effective response, most likely. It's better to try that strategy. So that's another thing that you can do. And sometimes you have to repeat some of these things, right, more than once. Paraphrase speakers' ideas. Again, that does come back to listeners' responses that we talked about before in chapter 4. So, paraphrase, I'm going to read this little exchange between a customer and a manager, right, that shows the value of reflecting back the essence of what someone is saying to you. The customer is more emotional, is upset and irritated, right? So here we go. We're gonna listen to what the manager does here. Customer starts the conversation. "The way you people run this store is disgusting. I just want to tell you that I'll never shop here again." The manager speaks now. "It seems that you're quite upset. Can you tell me your problem?" "Oh, it isn't my problem. It's the problem your salespeople have. They seem to think it's a great inconvenience to help a customer find anything around here." "So you didn't get enough help locating the items you were looking for, is that it?" "Help? I spent 20 minutes looking around in here before I even talked to a clerk. All I can say is that's no way to run a store." "So what you're saying is that the clerks seem to be ignoring the customers?" "Well, no. They were all busy with other people. It just seems to me that you ought to have enough help around to handle the crowds that come in at this hour." "Oh, I understand now. So what frustrated you most was the fact that we didn't have enough staff to serve you promptly." That's right. I have no complaint with the service I get after I'm waited on. I always thought you had a good selection here. It's just that I'm too busy to wait so long for help." "Well, I'm glad you brought this to my attention. All right, we'll certainly don't want to lose loyal customers going away mad. So I'll try to see that it doesn't happen again." Okay, so that's a good example, quoted in the Looking Out, Looking In, 15th edition on page 370. So that's a little excerpt that I thought might kind of help us out briefly here with the paraphrasing. All right, so the next one is ask what the critic wants. Again, sometimes people tell you very directly, right? Turn down the music, go wash the dishes, that kind of thing. So that's different. But sometimes you've got to dig around and you need to ask what the critic wants, because sometimes people simply don't tell you what they really mean. They may be too indirect about it. They may not be direct, and so you may have to dig around so they will be direct about it. So ask what they want. If they seem to be beating around the bush, like we've talked about before, and not really getting to the point of what's bothering them, then you want to ask, what is it that you want from me? What would you like me to do differently? How can I help the situation? What would you like to happen? Anything like that. What does the critic want? So that's pretty easy. You can also ask about the consequences of your behavior. So if you know there's certain things you have done, right? Let's say, you know, one of the teens in the house, right, has been coming home after curfew several nights in a row, and they're pretty much going to have to admit that that's what they've been doing. So if you come in and you have no respect for me, or this, that, and the other, then facing that criticism instead of going on the defense would be, okay, so what, obviously, I have been doing that, and so what are going to be the consequences? What does this mean from here on out? Is there going to be a change in the rules, right? Okay. You can also ask what else is wrong. So kind of while the door is open, one of the things that you can do is to just go ahead and address other things that might be under the surface. Just say, is there anything else that's bothering you besides that? Is there something else maybe we should go ahead and talk about? All right, so sometimes that's a good thing to do. Reduces defensiveness if there's still, because many times there's more than one problem going on. There's maybe a cluster of issues that's happening, a cluster of behaviors that's been going on. So that's a good time sometimes to go ahead and ask what else might be wrong that needs to be addressed. You can also agree with the critic. All right. Now, there's two ways to do this. And obviously, if you agree with the critic, if you've ever done this, you know it diffuses a situation pretty quickly. So you can agree with the critic in a way that where you agree with the facts. So if somebody says, you told me you were going to call me last night and you didn't call. All right. So you can agree with that. If that's a verifiable, right, evidence, fact, then agreeing with it's a good idea rather than just giving excuses. It's better to say, you're right, that did happen. I didn't call you like I said I was going to. It's much better to go ahead and agree with the facts because the facts are there. They're not going to change. Okay, they're verifiable. Or another thing that you can do is agree with the critic's perception. Really, you can add a little note there. It's really about agreeing that the critic, you can see why the critic sees it that way. You can understand, show how you can see their perception of the situation. Then you can add more about how you saw it and about why the behavior was going on. But, you know, those are two different ways to kind of agree with the critic. You can also just agree with the right for them to see it differently than you do. So all of that is in there with the agree with the critic. Okay, so again, those are it's not like you have to have a list that you memorize, but those are some ways that because we go on the defensive for sure, and when we receive criticism that is accurate. So all human beings feel this, right? It's that fight or flight response. We all have that. So it's best if we just try to use one of these strategies. Okay.